Lord Jesus. Who done locked you down here like this? Clara's voice broke as the flashlight trembled in her hand. The narrow beam cut through the damp darkness and landed on a man bound to a rusted pipe. His body slumped, breathing shallow, skin bruised and gray with exhaustion. Her heart hammered so hard she could hear it in her ears. The basement smelled of mildew and cold metal. She took a step back, then another, her heels scraping the concrete. The man lifted his head with effort, eyes barely open. "Water," he whispered. Clara swallowed. This was supposed to be a simple cleaning job one afternoon in a vacant house on the quiet side of South Milwaukee. The realtor had smiled. Casual as could be. Empty for weeks. Nothing but dust. Now there was a living man dying in the shadows. She knelt despite herself, old instincts rising from a life she thought she'd left behind. "Don't move," she said softly, more to steady herself than him. She set the flashlight on the floor, shrugged off her jacket, and pressed 2 fingers to his neck. A pulse weak, irregular. "Lord help me," she murmured. From her bag she pulled a half-used roll of gauze, a small bottle of antiseptic wipes she kept for her son. Elijah. Her hands shook, but they knew what to do. She loosened the rope just enough to stop it biting deeper into his wrist, cleaned the dried blood from his temple, wiped his lips. He flinched, then relaxed as if the simple care anchored him to the world. "I'm Clara," she said, forcing calm into her voice. "You stay with me. All right?" He nodded faintly. She unscrewed the bottle of water she'd brought for herself, tipped it slowly to his mouth. He coughed, then swallowed, greedily at first, then carefully as she slowed the flow. Color returned to his face in fragile increments. "Thank you," he breathed. "Don't thank me yet," she said. "You still look half gone." Well," he managed a weak smile. "Feels like it." "I canned." She wrapped her jacket around his shoulders, tucking it in like she used to do for Elijah when he had fevers. The man's eyes followed her, alert now, studying. "What's your name?" she asked. "Ellis," he said after a pause. "Ellis Granger." "It's not B1. The name hit her like a dropped plate. "Granger. The billboards downtown. The hotel chain. The man who'd vanished weeks ago. News anchors speculating about kidnappings and betrayals." Her mouth went dry. "You're that Ellis Granger?" "I was," he said quietly. "Before this, Her knees went weak. She rose, backing away, the flashlight wobbling again. I just clean here," she stammered. "I don't know nothing about this. I swear." End quote. "I believe you," he said. "Please, just don't leave me like this. If you want to do better." She hesitated. Every instinct screamed danger. Then, from above, came the faint sound of footsteps. Clara froze. Ellis's eyes widened. "Go," he whispered urgently. "Please." "We could have built and..." The footsteps grew louder. A door opened somewhere upstairs. A man's voice, sharp, irritated, muttered to himself. Clara's chest tightened. She grabbed the flashlight and moved toward the stairs. Halfway up, the basement light snapped on. "Who the hell are you?" She turned to see a tall man in a tailored coat. Anger etched into his face. He looked at her like she was dirt tracked onto polished marble. His gaze flicked past her, down into the basement. "What did you see?" he demanded. Clara's mind raced. "Sir, I'm the cleaner," she said quickly. "The realtor sent me. I ain't seen nothing but dust and mold." "You..." He stepped closer, looming. "You lying to me, Coxamber." "I swear on my child," she said, voice trembling. "I just started today. In Ender," he sneered. "You people always swear on something." The words stung, sharp and familiar. He grabbed her arm, hard enough to make her gasp. "You think you can wander into places you don't belong?" he hissed. "You think anybody gonna believe you over me?" Pain flared as he shoved her back against the wall. Her head struck the concrete lightly, stars bursting behind her eyes. "Please," she whispered. "I didn't do nothing." 18. He leaned in, breath cold. "You talk about this. You're finished. Job gone." Reputation gone. Maybe worse. I gone. She nodded rapidly. Tears burning. I won't say a word. Oh. He released her with a shove. Get out. And if I ever see you near this house again, you'll regret it. Clara stumbled up the remaining steps, her arm throbbing, her heart pounding like it wanted out of her chest. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Outside, the autumn air hit her like a slap. She staggered to her car, hands shaking as she fumbled with the keys. Her cheek throbbed where she'd hit the wall. She pressed her palm to it, breathing fast. Just a cleaning job, she told herself. Just leave. As she drove away, the image of Ellis's eyes followed her, fearful, trusting, desperate. At home that night, Elijah noticed the bruise blooming on her arm. Mama? What happened? She forced a smile. Clumsy. Baby. Just tired. Oh, but when she lay awake later, staring at the ceiling, the man's whisper echoed in her mind. Please, don't leave me like this. Clara closed her eyes, knowing she already had, and knowing, with a certainty that settled heavy in her chest, that she wouldn't be able to stay away. If you felt Clara's pain, like this video and comment where you're watching from. You never know who nearby might be watching with you. Clara stood in her tiny kitchen, staring blankly at the flickering fluorescent light above the sink. The kettle hissed on the stove, but she wasn't listening. Her left arm throbbed where the man Ellis Granger's brother, she now realized, had grabbed her. Her back still ached from being shoved against the basement wall. She'd cleaned up the cut on her cheek with rubbing alcohol, then applied concealer before Elijah woke up. He was at the table now, working on math, homework, and munching on a bowl of cereal. Blissfully unaware, 10 years old, all energy and kindness. Clara watched him, the tightness in her chest growing. What if the man had followed her? What if he came to their home? She turned off the stove, poured hot water over a tea bag, but didn't drink it. Her mind wouldn't stop replaying that basement scene. Ellis Granger real, alive, suffering. She'd touched his skin, seen the fear and dignity still flickering in his bruised eyes, and now she knew his brother had him locked up like a dog. She didn't need to understand why. She'd seen enough family betrayals to know sometimes blood didn't mean anything, but she also knew silence wouldn't save him. Later that night, after Elijah was asleep, Clara sat on the edge of her bed, the little apartment silent but for the hum of the fridge. The news played softly from the living room. A reporter on screen spoke of speculation regarding Ellis Granger's disappearance. No new leads. No suspects. His estate was reportedly being handled by his younger brother, Andrew Granger. That's him, Clara thought, the rage in her gut twisting. That's the man who shoved me. Her hand trembled as she picked up her phone. She opened Google and typed Ellis's name. Articles, company websites, press conferences. She clicked on a video. Ellis at a charity gala, speaking about urban housing development. His voice, smooth and strong, the same voice that had rasped, "Thank you," from the shadows. She scrolled further. Andrew Granger, tall, clean cut, always photographed at his brother's side. In every photo, Andrew looked like a man trying too hard to smile. Clara stared at the screen, then turned it off. Her stomach churned. She couldn't go to the police. She couldn't trust the realtor. No one would believe her. A maid, working under the table, accused of trespassing in a house with no witnesses, she'd be buried. But she couldn't stay away, either. The next morning, Clara packed a small first aid kit, a protein bar, and a fresh bottle of water in her purse. She told Elijah she had another cleaning job. He kissed her cheek and went to school with his backpack bouncing. Clara took the long way back to the Granger estate, driving in circles first to make sure she wasn't followed. When she arrived, the house looked the same, quiet, grand, and empty. She parked around the corner and walked the final block on foot. Her heart pounded as she crept through the back gate, slipping in through the side entrance she'd noticed during her first visit. No alarms, no security. Either Andrew was arrogant, or he truly believed no one would come back. She moved quickly through the house, her sneakers whispering over the marble floors. At the top of the basement stairs, She paused, listening. Silence. She opened the door and descended, each step creaking like a warning. The air was colder than before. When she reached the bottom, she flicked on her flashlight. "Ellis?" she whispered. No answer. She walked further in, the beam cutting across shadows and rusted beams. Then she saw him. He was slumped against the same pipe, still wrapped in her jacket. His head tilted slightly, as if he'd been waiting. When the light hit his face, his eyes fluttered open. "Clara," he breathed. She knelt, setting down the bag, her hands already working. She checked his pulse. It was stronger today. She opened the water and helped him drink again, then offered him a bite of the protein bar, breaking it into soft pieces. "You came back," he said after a moment, his voice clearer. "I told you I might," she muttered. He smiled faintly. "I was afraid he'd scared you off." "Ezet, he nearly did," she admitted. "But then I remembered my grandma always said evil don't sleep unless you let it." 22. He winced as she dabbed at a cut on his shoulder. "Andrew saw you?" "He did more than see me," Clara said, eyes flashing. "He put his hands on me, called me names, said if I opened my mouth, I'd be finished." Ellis clenched his jaw. "He'll regret that. This very precies." "No." Clara shook her head. "You need to stay alive first. Then we figure the rest out." "Oh," she paused. "Why ain't you scream louder? Why not bang the pipes? Try to break free?" Ellis gave a hollow chuckle. "I did. For the first week. Then I realized he'd soundproofed this whole place. Nobody was ever meant to hear me." "We're exhausted." Clara's stomach turned. "But you did," he added softly. "You heard me." She looked away, embarrassed by the lump in her throat. "Yeah. Well, I got good ears." Was not too hisnized. They sat in silence for a minute, the air heavy between them. Then Ellis said, "I think he's preparing to move me. Maybe worse. He didn't expect me to live this long." "I was. We can't wait," Clara said. "I need proof. Something I can use if things go south." "There's a folder?" Ellis whispered. "Back office. Second floor. Locked drawer. You find that, maybe the truth gets out." "Where?" Clara swallowed. "All right. But I ain't promising miracles." With Prosident, she stood up, brushed off her jeans. "I'll be back soon as I can. My Stein." Ellis looked at her, his voice faint but steady. "You're risking everything." "God drang. I've been risking everything my whole life," Clara said. "This time, maybe it's worth it." She turned and climbed the stairs, every creak echoing like thunder. But she didn't look back. She couldn't. The clock was ticking, and somewhere above, the house was no longer empty. Clara returned home just before sunset. The sky over South Milwaukee was dipped in burnt orange, the last sliver of daylight painting her small apartment in a warm glow that didn't match her mood. She stood silently at her sink, watching the water run over her hands longer than needed. Her reflection in the kitchen window showed eyes tired beyond her years. A bruise had darkened along her jawline. She'd used Elijah's foundation stick to cover it this morning. Now it pulsed with every heartbeat. She couldn't stop thinking about Ellis, how hollow his voice had sounded when he said, "He's preparing to move me." Every hour mattered now. After dinner, Elijah snuggled into the couch with his favorite book, unaware of the war brewing beneath his mother's calm voice. She read to him, braided his hair, kissed his forehead. But inside, Clara's mind was already walking the second floor of the Granger estate. She waited until he was asleep before she left again, heart beating double time. Clara parked her car 3 blocks from the mansion this time. The street was quiet, save for the faint rustling of leaves and the occasional bark of a distant dog. As she walked, she rehearsed her steps in her head. Side door, up the west stairwell, second floor office, locked drawer. The mansion loomed like a sleeping giant, cold and indifferent, the same way Andrew had looked at her, like she didn't matter, like her voice would never reach anyone. But tonight, she was going to make herself heard. She slipped in through the side entrance, her hands gloved, flashlight tucked under her arm. She moved quickly, remembering each creaky board and avoiding it. The hallway to the west stairwell was darker than she remembered. She paused before the bottom step. Listening, no voices. No movement. Just the groan of old wood and silence. On the second floor, the carpet softened her footsteps. She passed closed doors, rich wooden trim, and chandeliers that hadn't held light in years. She found the office big oak doors, brass handles, one cracked slightly open. Her fingers trembled as she pushed it wider. The room inside smelled of old paper and stale air. The desk was massive, carved from deep cherry wood. Behind it, a tall window overlooked the backyard. Books lined the shelves: law, finance, philosophy, power books. Clara moved fast. She checked the drawer's top, middle, locked. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a hairpin. Her cousin in Baton Rouge had taught her how to pick simple locks when they were teenagers. For emergencies, she'd said. Laughing, Clara inserted the pin and turned gently. One click, then another. The drawer gave way with a soft snap. Inside were 2 thick manila folders and a leather-bound notebook. She opened the first folder. Her breath caught. Bank statements, legal contracts, email printouts, and photos. Ellis. In meetings, on vacation, with a woman Clara didn't recognize. Then suddenly surveillance photos. Ellis walking into the mansion 3 weeks ago. Another, time-stamped the next night, showed a car parked at the rear entrance. The license plate matched the one Clara had seen when she first noticed something was wrong. The second folder was worse. It detailed power of attorney transfers, forged signatures, legal filings with Ellis's name, dated after the day he went missing. Clara's stomach turned. It was a paper trail, a well-planned coup. She pulled out her phone and began snapping photos of everything, page after page. She didn't trust digital copies. She'd hide the originals later if needed. Maybe in Elijah's toy box. No one ever checked under the Legos. She was slipping the folders into her tote bag when a floorboard creaked in the hallway. Her whole body stiffened. She turned off her flashlight. Another creak. Closer. Clara ducked behind the desk, heart in her throat. The door eased open with a groan. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. She held her breath. "Who's in here?" A voice called low. Familiar. And dangerous. "Andrew." Clara didn't move. The footsteps came closer. The scrape of a shoe against the floor. She heard the soft rustle of fabric as he stopped near the desk. The silence that followed was unbearable. Then his phone buzzed. She heard him sigh, curse softly, and walk out. Clara didn't dare breathe until the sound of his shoes faded down the hall. She crawled out from behind the desk, grabbed her bag, and slipped silently from the room, her pulse racing. As she moved down the stairs, she heard nothing more. Outside, the cold air bit at her skin, but she didn't stop until she was 2 blocks away. Then 3. She reached her car, locked the doors, and sat with her head pressed against the steering wheel. She didn't cry. She couldn't afford to. She drove home, parked in the usual spot, and tiptoed upstairs. Elijah was still asleep, his small chest rising and falling in rhythm with the night. Clara stood over him for a long while, one hand resting lightly on his blanket. "I'm gonna keep you safe," she whispered, "even if I gotta burn this whole thing down." She hid the folders in the linen closet, behind a stack of mismatched towels. Then she sat at the kitchen table, opened the notebook, and began to read. Ellis had scribbled in the margins notes. Observations. Names. One page stood out. It read, "If I die, tell the truth. And tell her, thank you." Clara's throat tightened. The fight was no longer about survival. It was about justice. Clara woke before dawn, still wearing the same sweater from last night, her back aching from falling asleep at the kitchen table. The manila folders lay on the counter, edges bent, corners smudged with her fingerprints. She hadn't slept more than 2 hours, but her mind was sharp-fired by fear, rage, and something else she hadn't felt in years. Purpose. The evidence was enough to raise questions, but not enough to bring Andrew down. Clara knew better than to go to the police just yet. She was a black maid with no legal connection to the Granger estate. No witnesses. And no backup. All she had was a growing stack of documents and a man dying slowly in a basement. And Ellis, if he was moved again, or worse, silenced, everything she had would mean nothing. She needed to act fast. By 7:15, Elijah was off to school with his backpack half-zipped and peanut butter on his cheek. Clara wiped it gently and kissed his forehead. "Be good, baby. I'll see you after." Was gonna problem. "You workin' again?" he asked. Eyes curious. She nodded. "Just some cleaning. Might be a long day." "Every 5. Okay. Love you. Mama. R." As he skipped toward the bus stop, Clara whispered to herself, "Love you more than anything." I won. She waited until the neighborhood was quiet before heading out. This time, she didn't take her car, she took the bus, then walked the last mile through alleys and backyards, moving like a shadow. Her body was sore. The bruise on her arm darkened to a purplish red, but adrenaline kept her upright. The Granger estate loomed ahead like a fortress. Her stomach tightened. Inside, the air was still and cold. The side door wasn't locked. Andrew hadn't changed a thing. Too sure of himself, Clara thought grimly. She moved quickly through the mansion, holding her breath at every corner. No voices. No footsteps. She descended the stairs to the basement, flashlight clenched in her hand like a weapon. "Ellis," she whispered as she reached the bottom. No answer. "Ellis. It's me." Is one frest. Still nothing. The flashlight beam shook slightly as she moved closer. He was slumped again, his face turned toward the wall. Panic surged in her chest. "Ellis," she said louder. Rushing to his side, she dropped to her knees, grabbed his wrist cold, but still pulsing, faintly. "Oh. No. No," she whispered. "Don't you dare die on me. I'm Selv." She reached for her kit, tore open a protein gel packet, and gently pushed a drop between his lips. "Come on, Mr. Billionaire. You're not going out like this. Not after all this." "Oh." His head moved slightly. A groan escaped his throat. "That's it. Stay with me." When contrady wild in the briest, he swallowed. "Barely. I got you," she said softly, wiping the sweat from his brow. "You're not alone." And, reeded, he stirred, his eyes fluttering open. "Clara, I'm here. Do I thought I was dreaming." "It's one." She gave a half laugh, half sob. "You dream of women sneaking into basements with peanut butter packs? That's some imagination." He tried to smile. "Better than starving." And also, she fed him in slow motions, dabbing water onto his lips, letting him drink little by little. When he had enough strength to sit against the pipe, she spoke. "I got the files. Everything. Your brother's lies. Forged documents. The whole story. You weren't wrong about him." "Ineza." Ellis nodded weakly. "He'll do anything to keep it." "Where Khan? He almost caught me last night. I was in the office when he came in." "It said it." Ellis's face darkened. "You could have been hurt." And, I was," Clara said, pulling back her sleeve to show the bruise. "But I'm still here." He looked down, ashamed. "I chose this," she said firmly. "You didn't ask me to risk anything. But when I heard you call my name that first night, I couldn't walk away. We have seasoned days to why." Silence fell between them, heavy but not uncomfortable. Then Ellis said, "I need to get out of here. Not later. Now." "Do like." Clara looked around. "He'll notice if you're gone. That might make things worse. Dimes, I have 2 on. If he moves me again, you'll never find me," Ellis said. "And he knows someone's helping me. He won't stop until he finds out who." "Oh." Clara hesitated. Every fiber of her being told her this was the most dangerous part, but she knew he was right. "I saw an old laundry chute upstairs," she said finally. "Used to send sheets down to the basement. If I can prop it open, maybe we can get you up there. You're light enough now." "Eyes." He raised an eyebrow. "Thanks. I think. Odor. I'll need a rope." And maybe a miracle. Oh, Ellis coughed. A weak chuckle. Miracles happen. You're proof. Eye numb, Clara stood, brushing off her jeans. I'll come back tonight. After dark. Dog. He reached for her hand. Be careful. There was woe. You too. We candid. She left the basement quietly. Every step rehearsed. She exited through the back again, unnoticed. Later that afternoon, she went to the local hardware store and bought 50 feet of nylon rope, gloves, and a pulley system paid in cash. She told the clerk it was for a clothesline project at her church. She also stopped at the public library and used the printer to make copies of the most damning pages from Ellis's files. She didn't put her name on anything, just labeled it in bold, Truth about Granger, private. She placed one copy in a sealed envelope and dropped it at a P.O. box she'd rented under a fake name, just in case. That night, after Elijah was asleep, Clara stared at the rope coiled in her hands. Tomorrow, she'd go back. Tomorrow, they'd try the impossible. But tonight she allowed herself one prayer. God, I don't need favor. Just don't let me lose him. It's tense. Then she packed her bag, took one long breath, and waited for morning. The next morning came gray and overcast. Clouds sagging low like the weight Clara carried on her shoulders. It felt like the world was holding its breath. She packed Elijah's lunch in silence. Mind already racing ahead, she tucked an extra cookie into his bag, kissed his forehead twice instead of once, and watched from the window as he hopped on the bus. Today had to go right. There would be no second chance. She waited until after rush hour before leaving the house. Instead of driving, she borrowed an old bike from a neighbor, Mrs. Hargrove, who only used it on Sundays, and pedaled toward the Granger estate with the coiled rope hidden in a duffel bag. No one paid attention to a woman on a rusty bike. She reached the alley behind the estate just after 10 a.m. It was dead quiet. The kind of quiet that made your ears ring. She hid the bike behind a tool shed, slipped through the back gate, and unlocked the same side door she'd used before. Still no new locks. Still no cameras. Too cocky, she thought. Too stupid. Or too sure nobody would dare. She moved fast. Up the back staircase. Second floor. Past the dusty gallery of portraits. She found the laundry chute in a narrow hallway lined with linen closets. It was old metal. Worn. Bolted into the wall, but it looked like it still worked. She tested it, opening the hatch and shining her flashlight down into darkness. A faint draft rose from below. It was a steep drop, but it led straight to the basement corner near Ellis's pipe. Clara dropped a small rubber ball down as a test. It bounced once, then disappeared into shadow. She unpacked the rope, tied one end to a heavy cast iron radiator bolted to the wall, then fed the rest down the chute slowly, gently, nodding every few feet to make it easier to grip. She whispered a prayer with every pull. When the rope reached the bottom, she gave 3 short tugs, the signal they'd agreed on. Then she waited. For a full minute, nothing. Then the rope twitched. Then again. Then dead weight. She held her breath. Pulling gently, the rope moved. A grunt echoed faintly from the chute. Clara dropped to her knees, braced her feet against the wall, and pulled. Her arms burned. Sweat poured down her back, but slowly, inch by inch. Ellis's weight came up the chute. When his head finally emerged, slick with sweat and dust, Clara gasped. You okay? He was pale, shaking, but smiling. Felt like being born again. Let's not do that again, she muttered, pulling him the rest of the way out and laying him on the floor of the hallway. Ellis coughed, drawing in clean air for the first time in weeks. You smell like cinnamon. Could. Clara smirked. That's just cheap lotion. Don't neglected. She handed him a damp towel and a bottle of water. He cleaned himself up as best he could. She'd brought spare clothes, her ex's old sweatshirt and a pair of loose pants. He changed quickly, moving like a man still learning how to own his limbs again. Then he stood, slowly, using the wall for balance. I can walk. Was not, barely, Clara said, gripping his arm. But we don't have time to rest. That's due one. They moved together through the mansion, quiet and careful. Clara guided him down the back stairs. Her plan was simple: get him outside. Hide in the gardener's shed behind the estate until nightfall. Then slip him into her car after dark. But they didn't make it. They reached the kitchen just steps from the rear exit when a voice rang out behind them. "Well, ain't this something?" "It's..." Clara froze. Andrew Granger stood in the doorway, dressed in a crisp navy suit, sipping from a black mug like it was just another Tuesday. His eyes locked on Ellis, then slid over to Clara. "You two make a cute pair." "I am." Ellis stepped forward, wobbling slightly. "It's over. Andrew, I know everything." "I have." Andrew chuckled. "Do you? You think some bruises and forged papers will matter when you're declared unstable? Hallucinating from stress and trauma?" Clara's fists clenched. "We got proof. Names. Documents. People will listen." Andrew's smile faded. "No. They won't. Not to you. Not to some maid who trespassed and assaulted a homeowner. That's how the papers will write it. That's what the police will say. And as for Ellis, well, he's a missing man with no memory. Or didn't you hear? He's mentally unfit." "Over. Try me," Ellis said through gritted teeth. Andrew's eyes flared. "You always were the weak one." "End question." He lunged forward. Clara shoved Ellis aside as Andrew reached for him. The two brothers collided, falling hard onto the kitchen tiles. Ellis swung, slow but desperate, hitting Andrew square in the chin. Andrew snarled, punched back. Clara grabbed the mug and smashed it over Andrew's shoulder. He shouted in pain and stumbled. "Go!" Clara yelled, dragging Ellis up. They bolted through the back door, down the stone steps into the backyard. Behind them, Andrew was shouting threats. Clara didn't look back. They reached the gardener's shed and slammed the door behind them. Ellis collapsed against the wall, panting. Clara locked the shed with the bolt from inside. "Are you hurt?" she asked. "Nothing new," he muttered. She peeked through the slats in the wooden wall. Andrew had come outside, pacing the lawn, but he wasn't looking toward the shed. They had a few hours, maybe less. Clara sat down next to Ellis, their backs against cold wood, both breathing hard. "Guess we just started a war," he said. She looked at him, then outside, then back at the folders still zipped in her duffel bag. "No," she said softly. "We just woke the world up. I can." The shed was cold, the air heavy with the scent of gasoline and old mulch. A rake leaned in one corner like a forgotten soldier. Cobwebs clung to the ceiling, and dust hovered in the beams of light slicing through the wooden slats. Clara sat with her back against the wall, knees pulled up, arms wrapped tight around them. Her pulse was still racing, her ears ringing with the echo of Andrew's threats. Beside her, Ellis was sprawled on the floor, pale and shivering despite the sweatshirt. His breathing was shallow, but steady. He'd managed to escape the basement, but not the damage it had done to his body. She checked the bruises along his ribs again, angry. Swollen things, and wiped the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief she kept tucked in her bra. "You're burning up," she whispered. He gave a weak smile. "Never thought I'd miss basements." "Azon." Clara didn't laugh. "I can't leave you like this," she said, her voice low. "You need a doctor. Is Wells. We can't go to a hospital. They'll find me. Diasa. You'll die if I don't get you something." "Oh." Ellis turned his head to face her. "There's a name in that notebook I gave you. Dr. Lena Ford. She used to work for the company, retired now. Trustworthy." "Oh. Where is she?" "Wauwatosa. Just outside the city. I remember her address." Clara reached for her phone, but paused. "I can't bring her here. Too risky. I'll have to go myself." I'll be fine." "They God no." She looked at him, not believing that for a second. Ellis leaned his head back against the wooden wall. "You ever think about how the world only sees us when we bleed?" "What?" "Back when I did press runs, charity appearances. All that people only cared when something bad happened. If it was tragic enough. The cameras came, the sympathy, the headlines. What?" Clara shook her head. The world don't see people like me even when we bleed. We get 9. His face changed. That's why it has to be you. Eden. Clara blinked. Excuse me. You're the only one they'll never suspect. You move in the shadows. You clean the floors they walk on. You hear things no one notices. Even Tuller the said. And when I speak up, Clara snapped, I get shoved into walls. Brut. Ellis didn't flinch. Which is why you're stronger than me. 2 Cations, of God 9. She stared at him, jaw tight. Part of her wanted to leave right then, walk away from this rich man's war and never look back. But the truth had weight, and she'd already carried it too far to set it down. I'll be back, she said, standing up. Don't die while I'm gone. I'm already short on miracles. He's nodded though. Clara exited the shed quietly. The backyard was clear. No sign of Andrew. She made her way around the side of the house, staying low, ducking behind hedges and trash bins. When she finally reached the alley, she broke into a sprint toward where the bike was hidden. She hopped on and pedaled fast, praying she hadn't been seen. It took her an hour to reach Wauwatosa. The wind whipped against her face. Her legs burned, and her back screamed from the weight of the duffel bag. But she didn't stop until she reached a small, red brick house with a white fence and a mailbox that read, Dr. L. Ford. Clara knocked. After a long pause, a woman opened the door, tall, late 60s, with silver hair pulled into a no-nonsense bun. Her eyes narrowed. Can I help you? You don't know me, Clara said, but I know someone who trusts you. Ellis Granger. With the dasted, the woman's face tightened. You'd better come in. That's 7. Inside, the house was warm and filled with the faint scent of lavender. Books lined every wall, and framed certificates from Johns Hopkins and the Mayo Clinic hung above an old fireplace. Clara explained quickly what had happened, what she'd seen, what Ellis had said. Lena listened, arms crossed. You expect me to believe Andrew Granger locked his own brother in a basement? I don't expect anything, Clara said. But Ellis does. And if you saw him right now, you'd believe it too. Mighting a prue then. With a not ired a better way. Lena studied her for a long moment. Where is he? Hiding in a shed behind the estate. He can't walk far. Ober, I'll need supplies, Lena said. Already moving. IV fluids. Antibiotics. Pain meds. He probably has internal bruising. Might be septic. I wide. Clara helped her pack the supplies. Lena didn't ask why she was helping, or what Clara's story was. She just moved with urgency and quiet competence, the kind women like Clara had learned to trust. They returned together, this time in Lena's car. They parked 2 blocks away, ducked through the back streets, and reached the shed just after dusk. Ellis was still alive, but barely. His skin was hot, his breaths shallow. Lena got to work, setting up the IV, checking vitals, applying medication with practiced hands. He's tougher than I thought, Lena said. But this infection's spreading. We need to get him out of here in the next 24 hours. Already, Clara nodded. I'll handle that. Oh wait, Lena looked at her. Why are you doing this? Clara didn't answer right away. Because people like him, their stories never get told right. And people like me, we get told to clean the blood and keep quiet. I was. She stood up, her shoulders squared. Not this time. Isan died. Clara didn't sleep that night. She sat by Ellis's side in the shed, wrapped in an old tarp they'd found beneath a broken wheelbarrow. The hum of the IV bag Lena had set up was the only sound in the dark. Ellis drifted in and out of sleep, his fever spiking just before dawn. Each time he moaned or muttered incoherently, Clara reached for his hand and squeezed it, whispering words she wasn't sure he could hear. Stay with me now, she said under her breath, wiping the sweat from his brow with a damp cloth. You made it this far. Don't you dare quit. I having Payson. By sunrise. The fever had broken. His breathing slowed. He rested easier. Lena returned with more supplies and breakfast sandwiches from a gas station on the edge of town. Clara wolfed hers down while keeping an eye on Ellis, who managed a few bites before dozing again. We need to move him, Lena said. Tonight. He's stable enough for transport. and I've got a friend who can keep him out of sight until we sort out the legal side. Clara nodded. I'll figure out the exit plan. I'll need one more night. Tangerine. Lena packed up. You're brave. Clara. But bravery ain't bulletproof. Rating 12/12. I know, Clara said quietly. That's why I'm going to make my voice louder than his lies. Muzzin. By noon, Clara was back home. She dug out an old prepaid phone she'd hidden in a shoebox beneath her bed. It still had a few minutes left. She opened the folder of documents, Ellis's forged signatures, fake power of attorney forms, bank transfers, and surveillance photos. Then she scrolled through her phone's contacts until she found one she never thought she'd use again. Shauna R. Channel 6, Milwaukee. Shauna was a local news reporter Clara had met years ago when a neighbor's apartment caught fire. Shauna had interviewed Clara briefly, then gave her a card with the words, "If you ever see something bigger." Clara took a breath and dialed. Shauna Richardson. 8. It's Clara James, she said quickly. We met once. On Sycamore Street. House fire. Aid. Shauna paused. I remember. You okay? I got a story, Clara said. And you're not gonna believe it. Gad. An hour later, Clara sat in the back booth of a quiet diner on the city's south side. Shauna arrived wearing jeans, a gray sweater, and tired eyes that still sparkled when she spotted Clara. I didn't think I'd ever hear from you, she said, sitting across from her. I didn't think I'd ever have something worth telling. Clara slid the folder across the table. Shauna opened it, eyebrows lifting as she flipped through the contents. Her professional demeanor kicked in quickly, phone out. Camera ready. Voice recorder activated. Is this real? Yes. Good. Who else has seen it? Just me. And the man it belongs to. Oh. Ellis Granger? Clara nodded. Shauna leaned forward. Clara, if this is true, this is the story of the year. But you could be in danger. You understand that, right? I'm already in danger, Clara said. And so is he. 18. Where is he now? I can't tell you. Not yet. But I need your help. When we go public, we need to go loud. Big. Nationwide. Shauna nodded slowly. I'll verify everything I can. But I'll need time. You've got 24 hours. Dollars and Shauna stared at her. Why so fast? Because tomorrow night, I'm pulling him out. For good. If we're gonna shine a light, it better be burning hot. Back at the apartment, Clara prepared the last pieces. She moved the remaining files into waterproof envelopes and packed them into Elijah's old baby bag, nothing suspicious about a worn-out diaper bag in the trunk of a car. She called Mrs. Hargrove to say she'd be out of town for a few days, watching a sick relative. Then, she sat on the edge of her bed and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her face had changed. The bruises were fading, but something in her eyes had shifted. She looked older, stronger, ready. That night, Clara returned to the shed just after sunset. Ellis was sitting up, sipping water from a paper cup. You're on your feet, she said. Kind of, he replied with a smile. Doctor Ford said I'll live. Barely. We know this, Graydon. You'll do more than live, she said. You're gonna stand in front of the world and tell them the truth. Idea. He looked down. What if they don't believe me? They'll believe me, Clara said, because the world don't expect a black maid to speak out. But when she does, that's when they listen. I might as I did. Ellis's eyes filled with something close to admiration. You're braver than I'll ever be. Is ever. I'm just tired of being invisible. She handed him a hoodie and a hat. Let's get you ready. We leave in 2 hours. Shauna's preparing the story. Once you're safe, we go live. Doe 2. Ellis pulled the hoodie over his head. His hands still trembled, but there was strength returning to his posture. Clara pulled out her phone, looked at the time, and then at the shed door. You ready? As I'll ever be. 10:80. We're 1990. Outside. The darkness waited, but this time, Clara wasn't afraid of it. She was bringing the light with her. They waited until 2 a.m. Milwaukee slept under a blanket of fog. the kind that muffled footsteps and blurred the edges of street lamps. It was the kind of night Clara had always trusted, quiet, secretive, protective. She and Ellis stood in the shed, dressed in layers to hide their faces and figures. Clara had brought a wheelchair from Lena's contact, folding it into the trunk of her car, wrapped in an old sheet. Now, Ellis leaned against her shoulder, every breath shallow but steady. His body still bore the weight of captivity-lost muscle, inflamed joints, and the ever-present ghost of hunger. But he was upright, walking, alive. Once we're in the car. Don't talk, Clara whispered. We ride dark. No lights. No music. I cut through South 76th, then hit the back of the Lake Road. You nod if you need anything. But no talking. Do. Ellis nodded. Got it. I well. She peeked through the shed slats. Nothing. The estate was still. No lights in the mansion. No movement in the driveway. Clara had timed this perfectly. Andrew had late-night meetings in Chicago every Wednesday. The house would be empty until dawn. She opened the shed door. The cold slapped their faces instantly. Come on, she whispered. She tucked Ellis's arm around her shoulder and guided him across the lawn. Both of them hunched low, feet soft on the grass. The duffel bag was slung over Clara's back, bouncing lightly with every step. Inside were the originals documents, photos, audio files from her phone, a small arsenal of truth. They reached the back gate, slipped through. Clara's car waited a block away, parked beside an abandoned lot filled with rusted tools and forgotten lawn chairs. She opened the passenger door, helped Ellis in, then folded the wheelchair and stuffed it into the trunk. She got behind the wheel, adjusted the mirror, and turned the key. The engine purred quietly. No headlights, no sound. They drove. 10 minutes passed before Clara spoke. You okay? Ellis didn't open his eyes. I'm here. That's all I need right now. Oh. They took side roads through the sleeping city. Clara drove like a whisper, smooth turns. Steady speed. Never too fast. She knew this town's patterns. Knew where squad cars camped out. Knew which lights never changed after midnight. She turned onto a dark industrial corridor. The factories on either side long since closed. As they approached the old water plant, Clara's eyes flicked to the mirror. Headlights. Far back. Then gone. She swallowed. You see something? Ellis asked quietly. I'm not sure. Wonder. She pressed down on the gas a bit more. They crossed into the west side. Nearing the safe house, Lena had arranged an old bed and breakfast, now run by a retired nurse named Ethel. It sat off a rural road, surrounded by weeping willows and memories of better days. Almost there. Then the phone buzzed. Clara's hands tightened on the wheel. She pulled over under a canopy of trees. Heart thudding. She checked the screen. Unknown number. She declined the call. Ellis was watching her now. What is it? I don't know. But I don't like it. Ines Bide. The phone buzzed again. She turned it off. Then her burner phone lit up. Only one person had that number. She answered. Shauna's voice came through in a sharp whisper. Clara, we got a problem. Andrew Granger just filed a restraining order against you. Claims you kidnapped Ellis. The cops are already looking. And Clara went still. I've got the footage ready. Shauna continued. I can go live right now, but it'll bring attention. Big attention. Are you safe? Clara glanced at Ellis. His eyes were clear now, focused. We will be, Clara said. Go live. 10 minutes. Shauna said. You better have something to say. It was masting two up. Clara ended the call. Did you hear that? She asked. Ellis nodded. Let's finish it. Indeed. 9 minutes later, Clara and Ellis stood inside the bed and breakfast's guest room. Ethel busy setting up warm soup and extra blankets. Ellis had collapsed onto the couch, his legs trembling, but his eyes sharp. The TV played Channel 6. Shauna's face filled the screen. This is a breaking report from WTMJ Milwaukee, she said. Tonight, we bring you an exclusive and developing story. The sudden reappearance of Ellis Granger, presumed missing for nearly 3 weeks. And Clara stared. Sources tell us Mr. Granger was found alive, but injured. Shauna continued. We've obtained documents indicating fraud, abuse of power, and evidence pointing toward foul play by none other than his own brother, Andrew Granger. In quote, images flashed across the screen, photos of the basement, the forged documents, a brief audio clip of Ellis whispering from his prison. Clara leaned forward. And most astonishing, Shauna said, her voice steady, the whistleblower behind this rescue, a woman named Clara James, a maid who risked everything to speak up when no one else would. Was not it. A still photo appeared on screen. Clara, standing beside Ellis in the shed, face half in shadow but unmistakable. Ellis turned to her. You're not invisible anymore, he whispered. She swallowed hard, her throat burning. No, she said, but now we're targets. Again. The phone buzzed again. Shauna, this time. You're going viral, she said breathlessly. The story's out, but Andrew just made a statement. Says Ellis is mentally unstable and you're trying to extort the family. He's going to file charges. Bye. Clara felt the blood drain from her face. We need more, Shauna said. A face. A voice. Can Ellis speak? Will he? Clara looked at him. Can you? Ellis's jaw tightened. Give me a mic. The camera light blinked red. It wasn't a studio. There were no makeup artists. No polished backdrops. Just a dusty guest room lit by a lamp with a missing shade. An aging webcam propped on a stack of books. And a former billionaire sitting upright on a couch. His body still shaking from the infection that nearly killed him. Ellis Granger stared straight ahead. Clara sat just outside the frame, eyes locked on him, one hand gripping the duffel bag filled with truth. The world was watching now. Shauna's voice came through from the laptop. We're streaming. You're live in 3, 2, 1. I know. Ellis inhaled slowly, chest tight. His voice cracked at first but then settled like gravel being poured into a wooden box. My name is Ellis Granger. I Pruker. Silence. I was reported missing 3 weeks ago. What they didn't tell you is that I wasn't lost. I was imprisoned. By my brother, Andrew Granger. A gasp was audible even through the live feed delay. I want to be clear. This is not a hoax. I am speaking from a safe location because I fear for my life. And I owe my life to a woman most of this world would have ignored. Doug comment. He glanced off camera at Clara. Her name is Clara James. I might. Clara closed her eyes, her throat tightening. She is not a housekeeper. She is not just a maid. She is the only reason I'm still breathing. While the world looked away, she listened. When I cried out in the dark, she came. When my own blood turned against me, she refused to turn her back. Oh, Ellis paused, coughed, then continued. My brother wants my legacy, my name, my company, and he's willing to destroy anyone to get it. He faked signatures, forged documents, bribed doctors. I have the proof. You'll see it all. Was there? Clara reached forward and slid a flash drive into the computer's port. Shauna would upload the files within minutes. Contracts, emails, photos, financial trails leading straight to Andrew's greed. Ellis leaned forward. But this story isn't just about me. It's about power, and how people with less of it are told to shut up, sit down, and clean up the messes of men like my brother. Eri, his voice hardened. Clara risked everything, not because she wanted glory, but because she saw injustice and couldn't walk away. And I've spent too long walking away from people like her, people who work in silence, who are told their stories don't matter. Well, this one does. AC, he looked directly into the lens. I'm not afraid of Andrew Granger anymore, and no one else should be either. Then, softer, I'm ready to face the truth. Are you? Shauna's voice cut back in. We're off. I didn't. The screen went black. Silence filled the room. Clara exhaled for the first time in 5 minutes. Ellis leaned back into the couch, exhausted. You okay? She asked. I think I just declared war. Good. Now let's win it. Oh, by dawn, The interview had gone viral. It hit every major platform: YouTube, Facebook, CNN, even TikTok. Number Ellis Granger trended within 2 hours. Number Maid who saved a man started trending right behind it. And then something else happened. People started talking. Employees who had worked at the Granger Corporation came forward with quiet murmurs about Andrew's cruelty, his power plays. A former assistant posted anonymously that Andrew had boasted about how easy it was to buy silence. A housekeeper from the estate's summer home in Maine said she, too, had heard noises in the basement. Whispers became murmurs. Murmurs became headlines. By 10 a.m., Andrew Granger called a press conference. Clara watched it live on the motel TV with the volume turned up. Andrew stood at a podium in a pressed navy suit, flanked by lawyers and PR handlers. He looked into the cameras with forced concern. "My brother has been through a traumatic ordeal," he began, voice smooth as marble. "I am deeply saddened to see him manipulated in this vulnerable state. We got it down." He paused, gaze hardening just slightly. "The woman he mentions, Clara James, is currently under investigation for trespassing, assault, and fraud." "Okay." Clara's stomach twisted. "I urge the public not to fall for theatrics or doctored evidence. My brother is a brilliant man, but clearly not well, and I hope he finds the peace and treatment he needs." 12. The press conference ended with the usual storm of flashbulbs and shouting reporters. Clara turned off the TV. "He's playing the long game," she said. Ellis nodded. "But he's losing ground. He never thought I'd speak." "I know," she said. "He never thought I'd be heard." This not down. That afternoon, a lawyer called Clara. Her name was Yvette Nguyen, civil rights attorney, 55, based in Chicago. She had seen the live stream. She wanted to help, free of charge. "You've got a mountain of evidence," Yvette said. "But if we're going to fight this in court, we need more. Witnesses, financial trails, security footage, anything that cements the timeline." "Is that?" Clara's voice didn't shake. "I'll go back in. One last time." No," Ellis said firmly. "I will." "Afraid now." "Ellis." He raised a hand. "It's my name they tried to erase. It's my home. My company. I'll walk through the front door." "Oh." Clara looked at him. He was pale, thin, barely recovered, but something in his face had shifted. He was no longer the man chained to a pipe. He was the man reclaiming his legacy. "Then we go together," she said. "You sure?" he asked. She smiled. "I didn't come this far to play backup." "Okay." Ellis adjusted the collar of his coat in the passenger seat. It was too big for him now. His shoulders had withered, and the wool hung like armor on a wounded knight. But the coat was sharp, tailored, and unmistakably his. Clara had dug it out from a storage unit he once kept off Lake Drive. It still smelled faintly of cedar and old wealth. "You look like a man about to claim his crown," Clara said, eyes on the road as they approached the Granger Corporation headquarters. "I feel like a man about to step into a lion's den," Ellis murmured. They sat in silence for a few moments as Milwaukee's skyline peeked through the windshield. The Granger building, once a monument to Ellis's vision, now stood like a cold glass betrayal. 50 stories of steel, concrete, and secrets. "Do you remember what floor your office was on?" Clara asked. Ellis gave a ghost of a smile. 37, south corner. The window view kept me sane some days. Now, it's probably where Andrew's planning my funeral. Dire. He won't get the chance. Well, note. They pulled into the underground garage. Clara using the old passcode Ellis had written from memory. Miraculously, it still worked. The gate buzzed open, and they rolled inside like ghosts come to collect. Ellis leaned his head back. "God, I never thought I'd see this place again." One person. They parked in the private executive section. Clara helped him out of the car and into a discreet wheelchair they'd borrowed again from Lena. It was for show more than need. He could walk now. Barely. But this wasn't about walking. It was about presence. Clara rolled him toward the elevator. Security was light. Too light. "They don't think we'd dare," she muttered. Inside the elevator, Ellis took a breath and pressed the button for 37. The floor lit up like a challenge. "Whatever happens up there," he said. Voice quiet. "Don't let them split us. That redoes it. They won't." Clara replied. "I'm right here." When Selv, the elevator doors opened with a chime. The 37th floor gleamed with polished marble, glass partitions, and the sterile scent of money. Clara's sneakers squeaked against the tile, too loud in the silence. Then, from down the hall, a voice rang out. "What the hell?" Andrew Granger appeared, flanked by 2 security guards. He froze when he saw Ellis. Ellis sat taller in the chair. "Hello, brother," he said calmly. "You didn't expect me this early, did you?" Andrew recovered quickly. "You're trespassing." "Asn't. This is my building," Ellis replied. "And unless you've forged that too, I still hold 38% of the company." "Telv, you're unstable," Andrew snapped. "You're sick." It said. "I'm lucid. And very well documented." As it, Clara stepped forward and handed one of the guards a sealed envelope. "Affidavits. Evidence. Medical records. Filed this morning with a federal attorney and 3 different media outlets." Rebutted. Andrew's face darkened. "What do you want?" Ellis stood slowly, but on his own. The guards didn't move. "Not yet. I want my voice back," Ellis said. "And I want my name cleared." "It's not the Gontanov," Andrew scoffed. "You're playing martyr with a janitor." "I must see." Clara stepped closer. Eyes locked on Andrew. "Say that again." She dared him. He looked at her, as if for the first time. "You're just the help." "I would be one." "No," she said, her voice like flint. "I'm the reason you're standing here in fear." "Oh." Ellis placed a hand on Clara's shoulder. "We're not here to fight," he told the guards. "We're here to reveal." It Divin styled. He turned toward the glass-walled boardroom. "Shall we bring in the rest of the shareholders?" Andrew's face twisted. "You're bluffing." "Well, it is not. I've already emailed every one of them," Ellis replied. "Meeting starts in 20 minutes. Andrew laughed too loud, too sharp. "You think they'll believe you? Over me?" Clara smiled. "They don't have to believe you anymore," she said. "They only need to hear the truth." Was the resto. 23 minutes later, the boardroom was full. 16 shareholders sat in silence as Ellis stood at the head of the table. He swayed once, caught himself on the back of a chair. Clara stood to his right, her expression steel. Ellis spoke for 12 minutes. He told them everything. He didn't weep. He didn't beg. He spoke like a man who had built an empire from scratch, who had tasted betrayal, and who had returned not for vengeance, but for justice. He showed them documents, photos, recordings. He told them about the pipe, the darkness, the smell of mildew and copper, the sound of his own heartbeat slowing. And he told them about Clara. "What you see beside me," Ellis said, voice rough with emotion, "is not a housekeeper. She's the only person in this room who didn't abandon me. When every one of you believed Andrew's stories, she believed what she heard in the silence." To have a Zed. One shareholder, a woman in her 60s, stood up slowly. "My God," she whispered. "Is it all true?" "Yes," Ellis said. Another man cleared his throat. "We'll need to discuss. Legal restructuring. Immediate." Andrew, in the corner, was pale. "You're not thinking clearly." "Security," someone said. And just like that, 2 guards walked up and placed a hand on Andrew's shoulder. He yanked his arm back. "You can't. You're suspended pending investigation," a shareholder said. "Effective immediately." Wes. Andrew turned to Ellis, eyes burning. "You think this is over?" Ellis didn't answer, but Clara did. "It's just beginning." "Oh." Outside, in the lobby, the media waited. Cameras, microphones, dozens of voices shouting Ellis's name. He turned to Clara. "You don't have to come out there." "Man," she looked at him. "I didn't survive your brother just to hide now." Resent. They stepped forward together. The cameras flashed, the doors opened, and the truth stepped into the light. The sunlight hit Clara like a wall. Flashbulbs exploded. Voices surged from all directions. Ellis. What happened in that basement? Clara. Did you rescue him yourself? Is Andrew Granger under arrest? A dozen questions thundered at once. Clara blinked against the brightness. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, but her feet held firm. She stood at Ellis's side on the steps of the Granger Corporation headquarters, a simple woman in second-hand jeans and a borrowed coat, now the center of a media storm. Ellis raised a hand, signaling for quiet. The reporters hushed almost. "I'll take one question," he said. A reporter stepped forward. "Mr. Granger, do you plan to press charges against your brother?" Ellis looked out across the crowd, face unreadable. "I plan to let the law speak for itself," he said. "But I will say this truth matters, especially when it's inconvenient." Reasoned. Then he turned to Clara. "She saved my life. Not just my body, but my soul. If you're going to print anything, start there. To have a get it in." He didn't wait for another question. Clara followed as he descended the steps. A black SUV waited at the curb. Lena's contact again. As they climbed in, the media swarmed, cameras tapping against the windows. Clara kept her gaze straight ahead. Inside the car, it was quiet. Ellis exhaled. "I think that went okay." "I down. You sounded like a Kennedy," Clara said. He laughed weakly, then leaned his head back. "It's not over." "Is it?" "No," Clara said. "Not even close." It muzzing. By afternoon, the news had reached Washington. Major outlets picked up the story. Talk shows debated whether Ellis's claims were part of a larger scandal. Civil rights groups issued statements praising Clara's courage. The hashtag number Justice for Ellis exploded online, alongside number She Saved Him. But behind the scenes, the machine had started moving. Andrew's legal team filed motions to delay investigations. A smear campaign began against Clara. Old traffic violations, a dismissed eviction, a photo of her yelling during a protest in 2017, all resurfaced. Ellis's lawyer, Yvette, called that evening. "They're going after her character," she said bluntly, "which means they're scared." A whine. Clara sat on the motel bed, watching Elijah play with a toy truck in the corner. "Let them dig," Clara said. "I don't hide nothing." Azimided. "Still, we need to be strategic. The public loves a hero, but they love to tear one down even faster." "Well, I didn't do this to be a hero. I know," Yvette replied gently. "That's what makes you one." The next morning, the threat started. An envelope slid under Clara's door with no return address. Inside, a photo of Elijah walking home from school, and a note. "Back off, or next time we won't just be watching." Clara stared at the note, her fingers shaking. Ellis called an emergency meeting. They relocated to Lena's safe house, the one on the edge of the city, surrounded by trees and silence. Ellis, Yvette, Lena, and Clara sat around a wooden table with mugs of black coffee. "They know we're winning," Ellis said. "That's why they're trying to scare us." This isn't just about you anymore," Yvette said. "This is corporate rot, a whole system of silence. If we go forward, you both need to understand your targets. Legally, socially, maybe worse." "As noted," Clara looked at Lena. "If something happens to me, can Elijah stay with you?" Lena's face tightened. "Nothing's gonna happen. But yes, of course. Workin'." Ellis leaned forward. "We can stop this right now. Disappear. Let the media cycle fade." Clara shook her head. "I didn't come this far to be silent now. My whole life. People like me get told to shut up and survive. I'm tired of surviving." She pulled out the second flash drive, the one she hadn't given Shauna. "This one has the rest. Audio of Andrew's meetings, his deals, everything. We release it tonight." Ellis nodded slowly. "We go loud. I have Dan." That evening, Clara made her own video. It wasn't polished. Just her, sitting at a kitchen table, hands folded, voice steady. "My name is Clara James," she said into the camera. "I'm not rich. I don't come from anything. But I saw a man chained in a basement, and I decided to do something. She paused. And now they're threatening my child, trying to scare me into silence. So I'm telling you, if anything happens to me or my boy, you'll know who to look at. She placed the flash drive on the table. This is the truth. I'm not hiding it anymore. It is not an effa. The video went live at 9:12 p.m. By midnight, it had been viewed 6 million times. Across the city, Andrew Granger watched from a luxury condo. His glass of bourbon trembled in his hand as the video played. His phone buzzed nonstop. Board members, lawyers, shareholders panicking. She just started a fire. His assistant whispered. Andrew didn't blink. Then we'll drown her in it. Most. But the next morning, the fire was only burning brighter. A citywide protest formed outside Granger headquarters, hundreds holding signs that read, "Listen to Clara. The basement is real. And justice for Ellis." Elijah's school principal called to say the boy wouldn't be allowed on campus until the situation calms down. Clara's landlord posted an eviction notice. Her face was on every screen in America. And yet, she stood tall. When a reporter asked if she regretted speaking out, Clara said, "No, because silence never saved anybody." Clara stared at the eviction notice pinned to her apartment door. The red ink bled through the paper like a wound. Elijah clutched her hand. Confused. "Are we leaving again, Mama?" he asked softly. Clara swallowed. "Just for a little while. Baby." She pulled the paper down, folded it neatly, and tucked it into her bag along with the other threats. Letters. And now, a court summons. Andrew Granger had filed a defamation lawsuit. The amount listed? $15 million. As if that number could smother her voice. Back at Lena's safe house, Ellis sat by the window with a cane resting beside his chair. The strength was returning to his limbs. And with it, his fire. "I saw the protest crowd this morning," he said as she entered. "They were holding signs with your name. Not mine, yours. We have a ballady as that." Clara hung her coat, jaw set. "Because I'm the one they want to erase. It's seen. No one's erasing you now. It's not Ignine. That's not what my landlord thinks. Or Elijah's school. Or the cops. Maid." Ellis stood slowly. "Then let's give them a reason to remember your name. I have been." He walked over to a filing box on the table. "Do you know what this is?" Clara peered inside. Dozens of documents. Contracts. Audio transcripts. "This is what Andrew built the company on," Ellis said. "Illegal buyouts. Off-the-record layoffs. Racially motivated firings. I was blind to it for years." Clara pulled out a transcript and read a few lines aloud. Andrew's voice. Smug and unmistakable. Discussing a plan to lay off an entire division in Atlanta to avoid diversity quotas. She looked at Ellis. Stunned. "This is enough to bury him. It's time the world hears it." With San, they contacted Shauna again. This time, not for a live stream but a televised special. Prime time. National. "I've already got CBS and MSNBC fighting over the exclusive," Shauna said on speaker. "They're calling Clara the steel voice of Milwaukee. You're both becoming symbols." News to 10. "I don't want to be a symbol," Clara said. "I want to be safe." "Do effed. Then let's make your voice too loud to silence." The night of the broadcast, Clara wore a simple navy blouse. Ellis wore his father's cufflinks old gold with the Granger seal, a reminder of what legacy was meant to stand for. They sat under the hot lights, facing Shauna across a table. "This is a story about silence," Shauna said into the camera. "And what happens when someone dares to break it." Was not though. For 30 minutes, they told the story again, but louder this time. Backed by facts, documents, names, audio, faces. They didn't flinch. Clara spoke with precision. Her voice even. She told of the basement, the bruises, the fear. She told of being shoved against a wall, of watching Elijah sleep while wondering if someone would come for them in the night. Ellis spoke of betrayal not just by his brother, but by himself. for ignoring what he knew, for the quiet deals and blind eyes. When the cameras turned off, the crew stood in stunned silence. Then applause. A production assistant wiped tears from her eyes. "You just changed something," she whispered. By morning, the world had. The broadcast hit 20 million views online before lunch. Dozens of public figures from congresswomen to civil rights icons tweeted support for Clara. A class action lawsuit was filed against Granger Corporation on behalf of former black employees. And then finally the real break. The Justice Department opened a federal investigation into Andrew Granger. The FBI raided his office at 4:32 p.m. He was arrested on 3 counts: unlawful imprisonment, fraud, and obstruction of justice. Clara watched it unfold on TV. Ellis turned to her, eyes soft. "You did it." No, she said. "We did it." Oh, that night, Elijah climbed into bed beside her at Lena's, curling under her arm. "Are we safe now?" he asked. She thought for a long moment. "We're safer," she said. "And sometimes that's enough to start bite. Mighty nigh. Are you still a maid?" She smiled gently. "Not anymore. Baby. Now I clean up lies." Resoned. Elijah giggled, then yawned. As he drifted off, Clara stared at the ceiling. The pain wasn't gone. The bruises still lingered beneath her ribs. But she felt something she hadn't in years: resolve that burned cleaner than anger. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But tonight, the truth had a name, and it was hers. The courthouse steps felt taller than they had ever looked on television. Clara stood at the base of them, holding Elijah's hand, flanked by Ellis and Yvette Nguyen. Around them, a sea of cameras waited. Protesters, supporters, reporters with microphones and bright teeth, calling her name like she was somebody. She was. The trial was beginning not against Clara, but against Andrew Granger. The federal charges had been filed. The courtroom would decide the rest. But this day was more than that. It was about history, truth, presence. Clara adjusted the collar of her blazer borrowed from Lena. 2 sizes too big, but strong in the shoulders. She bent down and looked Elijah in the eyes. "You remember what I told you?" she asked. He nodded. "Be brave. Tell the truth. Hold my chin up." She smiled. "That's right. Isa." They walked up the steps together. Each one a victory. Inside, the courtroom was cool and quiet. Stark wooden benches, pale walls. The Granger family's legal team filled one side like a wall of mirrors, blonde, blue-suited, calculated. Andrew sat between them, jaw clenched, wearing the same calm smugness he always had, like the world still owed him something. Clara didn't look at him. She took her seat beside Ellis, and when he reached for her hand under the table, she let him. Judge Wallace entered, firm, gray-haired, a reputation for no patience with spectacle. He looked over his glasses at the room. "This is a federal courtroom, not a press box," he said dryly. "If you're here for performance, go to Broadway. Take the time." Then he looked directly at Clara and Ellis. "If you're here for justice, welcome." The prosecution began with the timeline. Ellis's disappearance, Clara's discovery, the documents, the forged bank authorizations, the hidden audio of Andrew admitting Ellis was too soft and that a little silence would make the board easier to handle. "I do a king." Then Clara was called to testify. She rose slowly, knees steady despite the shaking inside. Her name was called into the record, Clara James, and the clerk asked her to raise her right hand. "Do you swear to tell the truth? The whole truth, and nothing but the truth?" She looked at the crowd, at Ellis, at Elijah watching from a seat in the back, legs swinging, eyes wide. "I do." "One." On the stand, Clara told it all. How she'd started cleaning houses at 15, how she'd worked for the Grangers, how she'd gone into that basement expecting mold and found a man broken, beaten, and abandoned. She described Ellis's condition, her own fear, the moment she'd thought she might die. But mostly, she spoke of silence, how easy it was for people to ignore the noise when it came from someone in a uniform. "I was invisible," she said. Until I wasn't. Oh. Andrew's lawyer stood for the cross-examination. Cold. Precise. Smug. Miss James, he began. Isn't it true that you have a record of eviction? Yes. Repeated, and that you once received government assistance? Yes. I. And that you have no formal education beyond high school? Clara met his gaze. No. I went to night school. Finished my associate's degree last year. Oops. He blinked. And you expect this court to believe you? Over a man with Ivy League credentials, international business awards, and decades of success? Clara leaned forward. I don't expect them to believe me because I'm me. I expect them to believe me because the evidence is real. The bruises were real. The man I found chained to a pipe? Real. The documents? Real. Was the started Joe. She paused. You want to talk about records? Let's talk about his 9. I say. Gasps rippled in the courtroom. The judge knocked his gavel once. Counselor. You opened the door. She walked through it. Let's move on. When Clara stepped down from the witness stand, the room didn't applaud, but it didn't need to. She walked back to her seat and sat beside Ellis. His eyes were wet. You didn't just speak, he whispered. You shattered the silence. Risn't. The trial stretched over the next 5 days. Each one peeled back another layer. Company whistleblowers, financial experts, medical professionals who testified to Ellis's injuries. Andrew Granger's defense crumbled. Bit by bit. The final blow came when the FBI revealed surveillance footage from the Granger estate's private server. Video Andrew had tried to delete Clara, dragging Ellis out of the basement. Andrew shoving her. Her scream. The courtroom watched in stunned silence. Then the judge called a recess. Outside, a reporter caught Clara on her way to the elevator. Do you think justice will be served? He asked. Clara looked straight into the lens. I didn't do this for revenge, she said. I did it so no one would ever be left in the dark like that again. I downer. She turned and walked away. Later that evening, in the motel room where she still stayed, Elijah curled up beside her on the bed. Is the bad man going to jail? He asked. I think so, she whispered. Are we going to have a house again? Yeah. Baby. A better one. He looked up at her. Small hands curled around her sleeve. You're like a superhero, he said sleepily. Clara didn't answer. She just kissed his forehead, pulled the blanket higher, and stared out the window. Justice was slow, but it was coming, and it had her name on it now. The courthouse echoed with quiet tension. The jury had been out for 3 hours. Clara sat in the hallway with Ellis. The ticking of the old brass wall clock louder than any words between them. Every few minutes, Elijah would look up from his coloring book and ask, Is it over yet? Not yet, Clara would whisper, forcing a smile. Almost. Ellis stared at the courtroom doors like they might burst open and rewrite time. His hands trembled, resting in his lap. You think they'll believe us? He asked softly. They already do, Clara replied. They just need to say it out loud. Away. A sharp click of heels on marble snapped their attention toward the corridor. Yvette appeared, her phone in hand. They're back. 18. The courtroom buzzed with anticipation as the jury filed in. Judge Wallace's gaze swept the room. Calm. Focused. The foreperson, a black woman in her early 60s, stood slowly and cleared her throat. In the case of the United States versus Andrew Granger, we the jury find the defendant guilty on all charges. Oh, a collective gasp spread like wind. Guilty. On unlawful imprisonment. On fraud. On obstruction of justice. Andrew Granger's face was blank. Pale. As though the life had drained out in one long exhale. He didn't move. Not even when the bailiff approached to take him into custody. He only looked at Ellis. Eyes burning with something between hatred and disbelief. Ellis didn't look back. Clara closed her eyes. Elijah whispered. Is that it? She opened them again. Yeah. Baby, she said. That's it. I hope didn't I? Outside, a storm had rolled in. Clara and Ellis stood on the courthouse steps beneath gray skies. Microphones and cameras aimed at them like spotlights. Yvette spoke first. Justice today was not just for Ellis Granger. It was for everyone who's ever been silenced, ignored, or disbelieved because of their name, their job, or the color of their skin. 12 narrated. Ellis took the mic next. His voice was stronger now. No longer gravel but steel. I spent years building something I thought was untouchable. But it turns out the truth is the only thing that really stands. My brother thought power meant control. Clara taught me power is doing the right thing when no one's looking. Ender, he looked at her. Now everyone's looking. Clara took the microphone last. I didn't ask for this fight. I didn't want the spotlight. I just wanted to do what was right. And I want people to remember that this didn't happen in some faraway country. It happened in our backyard. A man was locked in a basement, and no one believed it until someone like me said it out loud. She paused, her voice tightening. And if someone like me can speak up, so can you. In the weeks that followed, everything changed. Andrew was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison. The Granger Corporation began restructuring. 3 board members resigned. Dozens of wrongful termination lawsuits reopened. Ellis reinstated long-ignored diversity programs and pledged reparations to employees harmed under Andrew's leadership. And Clara? She was offered jobs, talk shows, interviews, non-profit roles, but she turned most of them down. Instead, she started her own foundation, the Elijah Project. Its mission: to advocate for domestic workers, whistleblowers, and everyday people who saw wrong and dared to speak. I don't want statues, she told Lena one night. I want safety. For the next woman who finds herself holding the truth with no one to call. One chilly morning, Clara stood outside a small suburban house in Bayview. It wasn't fancy, just a 1-story home with blue shutters and a tiny porch swing. But it had a yard for Elijah, a kitchen big enough to dance in, a door she could lock and feel peace behind. Ellis handed her the keys. I had the foundation purchase it in your name, he said. I can't accept. You earned this. He cut in. No debts. No strings. Just a beginning. Ife. She stared at the keys. Her name was etched on a brass tag. C. James. A tear rolled down her cheek. I didn't think my name would ever be on anything like this. Oh, gang. Ellis looked at her. Eyes soft. Your name deserves to be on everything. It was. That night, Clara stood at the kitchen window while Elijah slept in his new bed. The street was quiet. The world outside buzzed on. But in this space, her space, there was only the hum of the refrigerator and the deep breath of freedom. She thought about the basement, the cold, the chains, the fear, and then she thought about this moment. A roof, a child safe in bed, a name on the deed. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispered, and tonight, it whispered her name. The morning sun poured through the lace curtains like golden thread. Clara stood at the kitchen sink, washing 2 coffee mugs, hers and Ellis's. He had dropped by earlier, like he did every Friday, with pastries from the bakery on 3rd and a newspaper folded under his arm. Routine had begun to replace chaos, and Clara welcomed it. Elijah's laughter echoed from the living room, where he played with Lena's dog, Oscar, who had adopted them as his second family. Clara glanced over her shoulder, smiling softly at the sight her son finally, unquestionably, safe. A knock sounded at the door, not urgent, not angry, just there. She wiped her hands on a towel and opened it to find Yvette Nguyen standing on the porch, wearing her signature trench coat and an expression somewhere between solemn and satisfied. You've got visitors, she said. Clara stepped out onto the porch, blinking in surprise. A van had pulled up, painted in deep blue with white letters that read, Elijah Project, Mobile Justice Unit. Behind it, a group of women stood, domestic workers, nurses, janitors. Their uniforms varied, but their faces carried the same look Clara had worn only months ago, exhaustion wrapped in silence. One of them stepped forward, Latina, mid-50s, hair pulled back tight. My name's Marisol, she said softly. We saw your story. I think I have one too. I'm Sue, Clara's heart swelled and broke at the same time. She stepped down from the porch and took the woman's hand. Then let's tell it. By noon, her living room had become a meeting space. Ellis moved furniture to make room. Yvette took notes. Elijah passed out juice boxes. And Clara sat in the center, listening, really listening as each woman shared her story. One had been underpaid for 6 years, forced to work overtime without documentation. Another had witnessed elder abuse in a care facility but was fired when she spoke up. And Marisol. Her story cracked the room in half. My employer's brother would come over when no one else was home. He never touched me, she said, voice shaking. But he'd say things. Stand too close. Lock the door. I was too scared to quit. I need the job. I send money home. Where is I? Clara reached for her hand. You're not alone anymore. Oh. Marisol's tears fell freely. Neither of them let go. That night, Clara and Ellis sat on the porch, watching the stars appear one by one. She's brave, Ellis said, referring to Marisol. They all are, Clara replied. They just needed someone to remind them. We were other. He sipped his tea. Thoughtful. You've become the reminder. Nined. Clara didn't answer at first. I never wanted any of this, she said finally. I just wanted to be a good mom, pay my bills, do my job. And now? Now. I want a world where a woman like Marisol doesn't have to be brave just to survive. And, Ellis turned toward her. You're building that world. Well, as in 22, she looked up at the stars, each one a silent witness. I'm trying. Over the next few weeks, the Elijah Project grew faster than anyone expected. Donations poured in. A former senator offered to sit on the advisory board. A church donated space for weekend clinics. And the mobile unit? It made 3 trips across the state in 1 month, giving free legal aid to over 200 workers. Clara stayed at the heart of it all, answering calls, showing up at kitchens and laundromats, speaking in high school gyms and union halls. She never wore a suit. She never tried to sound polished. She just told the truth. And people listened. One evening, after a town hall in Racine, a teenage girl came up to her with a folded notebook page. I wrote this for school, the girl said. It's a poem. About you. I do. Clara unfolded the paper. She wasn't a warrior. She didn't wear armor. She didn't ask for a sword. But when the time came, she stood between the monster and the boy, and said, Not today. It is none. Clara pressed the paper to her chest. Too full to speak. The girl hugged her and whispered, Thank you for making me feel seen. We have to heaven knows. Back home, Clara tucked Elijah into bed. He clutched the drawing he'd made of their house, complete with a rainbow over the roof, and a stick figure labeled Mama holding a megaphone. He looked up sleepily. Did you help someone again today? I tried. And, did you win? She smiled. I showed up. Sometimes that's the biggest win. He yawned and drifted off, breathing soft and even. She stayed a while, watching him sleep. Because after everything, after the basement, the bruises, the courtrooms and cameras, this was still the prize, her boy. Safe in bed, dreams unbothered. She kissed his forehead and whispered, We're okay now. Won, and for the first time in a long, long time. It was true. The autumn air carried the scent of leaves and wood smoke, soft and clean. Clara stood in front of a plot of land on the city's south side, bare earth and old roots where a crumbling building had once stood. Now, it was cleared, quiet, and waiting. Next to her, a gleaming sign read, Future Home of the Elijah Justice Center, built in honor of everyday truth-tellers. A crowd gathered beyond the ribbon. Volunteers, city officials, former maids, nurses, quiet women with tired hands, men with wary eyes, children too young to know what had been done to their mothers but old enough to clap. Ellis stood nearby in a gray coat, holding a golden shovel. Clara noticed his hands still bore faint tremors, especially in the cold. You ready? He asked. Clara nodded. The mayor stepped up to the mic, offering remarks about resilience and community strength. But Clara barely heard them. She was staring at the dirt. heart thumping, not with nerves, with purpose. When the time came, she stepped forward, took the shovel, and plunged it into the ground. A cheer erupted. Flashbulbs flared. But Clara didn't pose. She simply looked at the earth she'd turned over brown. Solid, forgiving, and whispered under her breath, "We're building something no one can bury." With resin. Later, as the sun dipped low, Clara and Ellis walked the perimeter alone. "You know, when this place is finished," Ellis said, "you'll be its founder. You'll have a plaque with your name." "Oh," Clara wrinkled her nose. "I don't want a plaque." "Wet. Why not?" "Because I want people to remember why. Not who." She paused. "Put a story on the wall. One of the women's. Something real." "Day," he chuckled. "You always did hate being the face of the movement." "Ever." She shot him a glance. "And you always wanted me to be." 8. They shared a quiet laugh. "Still," he said gently, "you should know something. Andrew's sentencing made national news. But the public didn't care about him." "Oh, they cared about what he did." "We wouldn't side." "No," Ellis corrected. "They cared about what you stopped him from doing." "Argon." Clara looked away, blinking at the horizon. "I still see him," she admitted quietly. "At night. In the hallway. When he slammed me. When he threatened Elijah." Ellis nodded. "I still see the pipe." "Idea." They were silent a moment longer. Then Clara said, "But I also see what came after." "IB era." That night, Clara returned home to find an envelope taped to her door. She froze. The paper was clean. No threats. Just her name written in neat cursive. Clara James. Inside was a handwritten letter. "Ms. James, you don't know me, but I watched your interview last month with my daughter. She's 15. She's been quiet for a long time. After your story aired, she told me something that changed our whole family. I just wanted to say thank you. Not for being perfect, but for being brave. That was enough." Clara pressed the letter to her chest. Her breath caught. Then, quietly, she walked into the house, set the letter on her nightstand, and made a decision. She wasn't running anymore. She was anchoring. The next week, she returned to the courthouse not for trial, but for testimony. She was helping write new protections for whistleblowers in the domestic labor industry. Yvette and 2 lawmakers accompanied her, but it was Clara who delivered the opening statement. She spoke not with fire, but with firm grace. "Justice," she said, "isn't always about prison bars or big checks. Sometimes, it's making sure the next woman doesn't have to choose between silence and survival." Days blurred into weeks. The Elijah Project expanded into Chicago, Detroit, then Cleveland. A podcast picked up her story, then a documentary crew. Oprah's people called, asking for a long-form interview. She politely declined. "Maybe one day," she said. Instead, she focused on small things, helping Marisol apply for a housing grant, reading Elijah stories from the same beat-up library card she'd used for years, learning to sleep without checking the locks twice. One cold Saturday, Clara visited the Granger estate. It had been seized and sold by the federal government. The new owners were developers, gutting it to turn the land into a senior living community. Clara stood at the edge of the old driveway. The stone walls still stood. So did the gate where she once parked her dusty sedan. Afraid and uninvited, she walked past it now, unafraid, into the yard, toward the basement doors. They were gone, the entry sealed, the ground smoothed. Still, she stood in that spot for a long moment, remembering the smell of mildew, the sound of chains, and then, slowly, she reached into her coat and dropped a small object onto the grass. The key. The old basement key. It hit the earth with a soft thunk, and she turned, walking away, not in fear, not in grief, but in release. The night before the Elijah Justice Center's official opening, Clara found herself alone in the nearly finished building. The walls smelled of fresh paint. The lights buzzed quietly overhead. Desks, desks stood in neat rows. Binders lined the shelves. Everything was ready. She wandered through the rooms in her worn sneakers, fingers grazing surfaces, eyes catching on the photographs already mounted along the hallways. Portraits of women and men whose voices had once been silenced. Each image told a truth. Each caption gave it weight. She paused at one frame, Marisol, smiling, proud, standing in front of her small business, Luz y Esperanza, Cleaning Co. Clara smiled back at the photo. In the main atrium, a bronze plaque had been installed that afternoon. She hadn't wanted it, had told Ellis no a dozen times, but now, it gleamed in the soft light, warm and unpretentious. The Elijah Justice Center, founded in honor of Clara James, because one voice can move the ground. Clara stared at it for a long time. Then she whispered, "Guess one voice did." The next morning, the parking lot filled before sunrise. People came from Milwaukee, Chicago, Flint, St. Paul. They came with folding chairs and strollers, with walkers and wheelchairs. Some wore t-shirts with Clara's face. Others simply came with signs that read, "Because of Clara, we believe now." Estaju, justice isn't quiet. On stage, a lineup of speakers addressed the crowd. The mayor, a state senator, Yvette, Lena, even a reverend from the Baptist church down the block. Each praised the work, the impact, the movement, but it was Ellis's voice that hushed the crowd. "I lived in silence," he said, "even when I had all the power in the world, and I nearly died in it." Is Reed. He looked at Clara in the front row, seated next to Elijah. "She saved me, not just from a basement but from a kind of cowardice that wealth makes too easy. She reminded me that silence isn't safety, it's surrender." He paused. "And now, this center stands because she stood first." It's 8. The crowd turned to Clara as she was invited to speak. She stood slowly, not because of nerves but because of the weight of what this moment meant. "Thank you," she began, "for being here today. I see faces I know and faces I don't, but I see truth in every one." "Where?" She paused, her eyes sweeping the crowd. "Some of y'all know me as a maid, some as a mother, some as that woman on the news. But what I want you to know is this: before all that, I was just trying to do the right thing." End quote. Her voice strengthened. "I didn't go into that basement thinking I'd become a name on a building. I went in because I heard a noise that didn't sound right. I saw something that wasn't human, and I did what anyone with a soul should do." It cested. Applause rippled, then hushed. "You don't have to be famous to be brave. You don't need a title to speak up. You just need to be willing to stand between someone and the darkness." 3. Clara looked at Elijah in the front row. His eyes shimmered. "This place isn't just mine. It's yours. It's ours. It belongs to every maid, every driver, every nurse, every cook, every person who ever thought they were too small to matter." With right dead, she stepped back, voice trembling. "This center ain't built from concrete. It's built from courage." ATD Live. The applause came like thunder. People rose to their feet. Strangers hugged. A woman sobbed quietly into her daughter's shoulder, and for one long moment, Clara James stood still and took it in, not as praise, but as proof that the story had become bigger than her. After the ceremony, Clara walked the halls again, this time with Elijah beside her. He tugged on her hand, leading her to a small side room labeled Children's Space. There were books, crayons, tiny chairs. "Mama," he said, pointing to a bookshelf, "you think I could write a story one day? Like yours?" She smiled. "Baby, I think you already are." "Arded." He beamed. "Then, will they remember our name?" She knelt, holding his small face in both hands. "They'll remember what we stood for. That's better than any name." "Is like to." He nodded, solemn as a preacher. That night, after the crowds dispersed and the sun dipped behind the buildings, Clara stood once more at the front door of the Elijah Justice Center. She turned the key, locked it, looked out across the quiet street. No chains, no basements, just bricks, people, light, the kind of silence that wasn't absence but peace. It rained softly the day Clara visited her mother's grave. The cemetery was quiet, just beyond the edge of town, where the trees bent low as if listening. Clara carried a simple bouquet, white lilies and one single blue iris, her mother's favorite. She knelt beside the headstone and placed the flowers down gently. Evelyn James, 1948, 2009. She made rooms brighter. Clara let the silence hold her for a moment before speaking. I thought about you today, Mama. A woman came into the center, a housekeeper. Just like you. Said her boss calls her girl. Even though she's 52. Said she thought that's just the way it was supposed to be. She exhaled slowly. I told her no. It's not. Not anymore. Her hand brushed across the damp grass. I think you'd be proud. Or at least, not mad I talked back so much. She smiled softly. Anyway, I just wanted you to know. We're okay now. Elijah's okay. I've got a home. And people listen when I talk. That still surprises me sometimes. Clara stood slowly, her knees creaking in the way they always had after long days on her feet. She looked out at the rows of stones. Justice didn't save me, Mama, but it gave me something to pass on. That too, Lang. She turned, walking back toward the car. Umbrella tilted against the drizzle. 2 weeks later, Clara received a letter from the White House. It wasn't just an invitation, it was a nomination. She had been named one of 5 recipients of the Presidential Medal of Freedom for her extraordinary contribution to civil courage and justice reform. Clara stared at the letter for a long time. Elijah saw the seal and gasped. Are we going to the president's house? She laughed. Looks like it. In the Progenal, the ceremony was small but grand. Held in the East Room. Sunlight pouring through chandeliers and security posted discreetly at every door. Ellis was there in a navy suit. Yvette wore pearl earrings. Lena wept silently through the whole thing. A tissue clutched in her hand. The president handed Clara the medal himself. You reminded this country what one voice can do, he said quietly. And you did it without bitterness. That's real strength. Iris asked. Clara didn't give a speech. She just bowed her head, accepted the weight of the medal, and held Elijah's hand tightly. Later, as they walked through the rose garden, Elijah asked, What's it for? Clara smiled down at him. For remembering that we don't have to be quiet when something's wrong. We have not of God. Years passed. The Elijah Justice Center became a national model. Other cities opened their own versions. Clara trained leaders from coast to coast, always insisting on humility, truth, and the power of community. She never got rich. She never wanted to. But she became something rarer, a trusted name, one that meant action, one that meant protection, one that meant a chance for someone else. On the anniversary of the center's founding, they held a candlelight vigil. Thousands came. Some held signs. Some held each other. Elijah, now taller than Clara, stood beside her with one arm around her shoulders. You tired? Mama? She nodded, leaning into him. Good tired. Arding actor. The stage was set. But Clara asked not to speak that night. Instead, a young woman stepped up, a maid from Atlanta who'd fled an abusive home and now led trainings for survivors. She told her story. She spoke Clara's name, not like a statue, like a flame passed hand to hand. When the crowd sang This Little Light of Mine, Clara finally cried. Not from grief, not from fear, but because something had been built, and it was still standing, because her voice had been heard, because her silence had ended a long time ago and never returned. In her final journal entry years later, written in soft, fading ink, Clara James wrote, I didn't change the world, but I told the truth loud enough that others knew they could too. And sometimes, that's how the world starts to change. The story of Clara James teaches us that true courage isn't loud, it's steady. It's the strength to speak when no one believes you, to stand when the world expects you to kneel, and to protect others even when you're vulnerable yourself. Clara reminds us that justice doesn't always wear a badge or sit in a courtroom. It often begins in the quiet choices of everyday people who refuse to stay silent. In a world that too often overlooks the invisible, Her voice became a light and showed us all that even the most ordinary person can be the beginning of extraordinary change.